Previously on agentpalmer.com, A Life Full of Positive Achievements, memoir celebrates Sid Meier. In Welcome to Earth, Will Smith is all of us on our ever-connected planet, and how many of you could have comfortably and publicly asked your boss why they hired you? This is the Palmer Files, episode 67 with JD, the founder of Veritas Fit and a mental health coach and advocate who is here because we should be challenged more to discuss our mental health. We discuss anxiety, starting conversations around mental health, storytelling and filling in the blanks, knowledge and not knowing, speaking generationally, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show. Welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Sturzik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 67th episode is JD. He is the founder of Veritas Health, host of the Dark Days, Bright Nights podcast, and a mental health advocate. We started interacting on Twitter in one of the many independent podcast Twitter places that exist, and through that connection, we've interacted enough that I wanted to have JD come on the show. No, this isn't two podcasters talking about podcasting. This is a great conversation that you're about to hear. One about anxiety, because we need to be more open to discussions and communications about our own mental health. But also, it's a conversation about differences in generations, how diagnosis and labels can help explain, not erase things, the speed at which information travels, being our own worst enemy, not knowing, and so much more. All of that is coming your way very soon. But first, remember, if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you could tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest JD at JD_the Jedi, that's JD_THEJEDI, or this show at The Palmer Files. You can find more information on JD and Veritas Fit at veritasfit.com. That's VERITASFIT.com, or by listening to JD host the Dark Days, Bright Nights podcast. Don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. JD, I have been trying to figure out what it is I do, and a friend of mine recently said that he wants to make cool things for cool people, and you, meaning me, wants to help people make those cool things. So I don't want to make them myself. You do a lot to help people. Is that where we can start?
Yeah. So first of all, you use the word help. So to help clarify, I guess, what I do and the role that I have and all the things that I participate in. I have two different definitions. And help by definition implies that one party is at a weaker spot, at a disadvantage than the other party. And that's going to happen in certain cases. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but support by definition means that both parties are in a relatively, similar situation and can stand to gain from one another. So what I do is that. And really, if I look back and all that I've done, both as a middle school teacher and now as a coach and a mental health advocate, support is what I do for people. And that's, that a lot of people don't talk about, when it comes to mental health and mental illness, and that's what I do, is support that conversation for others so that those that feel they're in a weaker spot in a tougher conversation, that they're not on the same plane.
Do you think that part of it is for those of us that are not professionally diagnosed, because I'm not professionally diagnosed, do you think part of it is a lack of or a fear of the acknowledgement of it? Like I'm actually not in that space. I speak from someone who knows I need to be diagnosed with something besides anxiety. But I don't have I've been unemployed for a while and I'm finally back into employment, but like for the longest time I didn't have benefits, so I couldn't just afford to go get diagnosed with anything. But I function as an adult with, I don't know, I'm high functioning with anxiety, I guess would be the description, right? But
Sure.
and I'm not afraid to talk about it, accepting that it needs to come up. Like, I
Sure.
guess that's part of the conversation. I think maybe that is like, I literally had, I think it was episode 13 of this show is me telling my anxiety story alongside a friend who's telling his anxiety story, which are vastly different stories, right? So I figured between the two of us, we hit a wide swath.
Probably. Absolutely.
But at the same time, had I not known he had anxiety, that would have not been an episode I did, right? Like maybe it would come up in conversation here and there, but like it feels to me like I'm more than willing to say, hey, I have it too. But I'm very rarely going to be like, hey, I have it. Like it's always the response. Like I'm predisposition to respond. Yes, you're not alone, but for me, it's the conversation starter. That's the part that's missing.
And you touch upon one of the other things that I do, and that's telling your story. That's a project that I do within Veritas. But you hit upon a point that I think is for a lot of people that no, I don't believe that you have to have this clinical diagnosis for a lot of things. Maybe in the sense that getting medication for it if you're finding that that's a necessity, or by sitting down with a therapist and eventually hashing out that that's truly, you put a label on what's going on. But for me, for a lot of people, that label isn't necessarily there to give you a treatment or make you do anything in the medical realm necessarily. It's really there for you and makes you sit there and go, okay, all right, well, that explains a lot of what's going on. I recently talked to somebody that is helping me tell the story of being bipolar, and a lot of their story that they shared was just that. It was all this stuff that's been going on in their life up until now. And I think they're like 26, 27 now. And, it kind of just helped explain what was going on and not really, made you go, oh, okay, well, I guess I was okay in doing that. It was really in the sense that by doing so, you allow yourself the opportunity to go, okay, all right, well, how do I go forward? How do I manage it? What do I do now? And for so many of us, that's the case, and it's, I don't know, you could throw a dart at a wall for the reasons why people choose not to say anything, it's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I will say this, my friends and family, for the most part, especially those closest to me, know, about it. And, the closest to me, I gave up the pretense, like, cause
Sure.
I think for a long time, the pretense was, what excuse can I give? Like, I don't travel well as a result of my anxiety.
Yeah, I believe it.
And,
I'm right there with you.
For the longest time, I would come up with excuses. So it was never my anxiety's keeping me from it. It's I'm double booked. It's I've got another meeting, or it's
Sure.
Maybe my hobbies, which are fairly important to me, just would always conveniently overlap with a thing that would require me to travel too far.
Yeah.
And with those closest to me, I now just go with, no, it's my anxiety. And part of it is I'm much better than I used to be as far as certain things that my anxiety would keep me from. But I think for me, that was the biggest step I've made in the last decade, probably. Because it used to be, all right, So somebody wants me to travel a few hours away, and while I can deal with the car travel as long as I'm driving, sometimes I just don't want to, or like I know that's
Yeah.
going to make me uncomfortable, and it's never, like it's that big admission is like I think it's just too much,
Yeah.
as opposed to now I'm recording that day, which by the way nobody's going to double check me on. Right? Like that's,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like
You're safe in that excuse.
I have that safety, but I
Yeah.
don't use it within the people that are closest to me now. But it's such a weird anomaly because since the pandemic, and since people spending more time with themselves and not being too busy to understand their own demons or issues, I think a lot more people around me, especially outside of that close circle, have now started to be a little more empathetic towards me.
Yeah. They understand it. Yeah.
And it's very odd because anxiety, like maybe few other things in the world, if you don't understand it, it's very easy to be like, well, why don't you just push through?
Oh, right.
Because it's not a broken leg, right? Like it's not like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. Like I guess you've been kind of around this. Do you find any like common themes? Like is what I'm saying, unique to me, or is it kind of,
No, I mean, no, there are certain aspects, sure, that, your own demons, your own, skeletons in the closet that are there. But
sure.
no, there are a lot of those pieces. I mean, I'm sitting here nodding my head that I could be the same way. But I think that the trouble, the roadblock for people is similar in the sense that, what it does is, by making those excuses and internalizing it that, oh, I've got this to do, or oh, I've got that to do, that part is not unique, because what's happening to everybody that does that is it's suppressing whatever that is causing you to make those excuses. And it doesn't mean that by putting that name on it that, oh, I have high anxiety, that it's going to change that it's going to necessarily go away. Because you're right. I mean, it's like telling somebody that's never swam before to just swim when you throw them in the water. It's not going to work. It's, I mean, you're going to be frantic, and it's probably going to be worse. Yeah, you may stay afloat for a moment, but you're not. But that's a lot of what I mean. Like, treating it is probably the most like blanketed word to use right there. But that's what a lot of it comes down to when it you look at like mental illness, is that we like to slap these catchy labels on it, and for some people it's okay. Self-care isn't selfish. Got it. It's okay not to be okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, you're right. You can say those affirmations in the mirror.
But that's just what you just said. Like, I love that, because I feel like for those of us, like I look at myself, because it's what I know the most of, right? Like, I was okay not being okay well before that became a thing, right? Like, and I understood kind of what was going on within me.
I had the shirt made before you even knew it was a phrase.
Yeah, and it's just I'm excited. I shouldn't be, right? Because I don't wish this on other people, but I'm excited that other people have come to the table.
Yeah.
Because nobody likes sitting at the table alone.
No. And people will tell you that they do, and I mean, I'll put myself as an example, but my brother is probably the most extreme example, in my opinion, and he won't mind me telling you that we both enjoy like being alone. And I've said this to my wife too. I enjoy being by myself for like an hour, and then it's like, okay, this kind of sucks. Like, what am I going to do? Stare at my phone here? I don't really like watching 100 shows. Sure, I'll go for a run. But to some degree, we all need some version of interaction, and making those excuses that, I'm double booked, or, it's kind of late, or whatever you're saying, you end up going home and looking at yourself going, man, why am I just standing here? Like, and that's when the real bad habits, the real demons come out, whatever you want to fill that in. Like you start, ordering out, too many nights, and you're overweight now, and because you've eaten nothing but fast food, or you smoke too many cigarettes, or become alcoholic. I mean, they could just start ramping up, but there's some version of that for everybody that's unique, that because you didn't choose to share some part of your story, and allow yourself to say, okay, this is part of who I am. I have high anxiety. I'm, bipolar. I'm depressive. You allow other people to A, hopefully open up for themselves, but B, make you look at you and say, okay, that explains a lot. And I'm so sorry that I misjudged this situation and misjudged you and didn't support you or didn't think, but by not telling your story and being okay with telling your story, and there's certain parts of it that are yours, there's things that people want to know and things that people need to know, and the things that people want to know are very few. But you can still share your story to the point that you're comfortable with what's going on in your life. Are you ever going to want to get on a plane or drive very far? Maybe not, and that's just who you are. But
well, I also think that part of that is it's a product of, I don't know, because I don't want to make a generalization here, but it's a product of attention spans, right? Like sure. I have no problem sitting here and talking to you for 30, 44 hours, right? Like I have I have that capability. I don't know if the audience can listen for the next 4 hours, but I can easily
you can talk,
have a conversation with you. No phone, no, something on in the background, just me and you. And, well, what do we talk about? Well, a lot of times we talk about ourselves, or we tell stories, or, whatever comes up, wherever this goes. But at the same time, a lot of people just tell me the end. No.
Yeah.
Like we don't, like I lament the idea that there are no more 90-minute movies. Okay. They're all 2 hours. They're all these big epics, and that's fine, but I still don't want to know the end. Yeah. Like, so why, when I'm talking to someone, do they want to go, well, are you better? Like that's not the story. Otherwise, nobody, like, cinema wouldn't be a thing. Everybody would read the last chapter of the book. Everybody would buy the DVD and go to the last chapter. Yeah. Like, you need to get there. And it's not always the journey. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But it's that interaction, right? And where we go is where we go.
Oh, we're hardwired as human beings to fill in the blanks of a story. And I think that's because of how fast information comes at us and where it comes from to us, and that we can curate our feed however we want to. It tends to speed things up. I mean, look at just on the basic level, like how we consume just media, right? Just like if you're looking at a show, and we'll compare that to how you look at a podcast, or even just watching a show in general. Now there's a button now that you can fast forward it 30 seconds ahead, 30 seconds behind.
Yeah.
And it's a great feature for some moments, maybe, but I mean, you could do that with a VHS. That was it. And there I am, like, dating myself, but
yeah, but we didn't.
You weren't going, okay, that's cool. They stole the car, and all right. So what happens? Is everybody okay? And no, you use rewind and fast forward because you're like, well, watch. Hey, dude, watch this part, and you do it over and over. But when it came to watching a show, you walked out of the room for a commercial, but you were praying for that commercial because it's like, man, I just need to go up and get a drink real quick, or I need to get my popcorn and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
but I'm gonna fly backwards and come here so that I can find out what just happened on this episode of Friends.
Yeah. No, I mean, must see TV, and I think there's a part of me that it's why I still enjoy physical books.
Yeah.
But also to one of the things that you're not saying, but you are, like, I've started reading authors that I like, even if I don't think the book interests me, to expand, right? Because one of the things about our carefully curated timelines and algorithms and is Netflix is only going to show me something that's similar to what I've like, but I'm not going to be able to get out. And while, I know there are people very close to me that might be listening to this that are like, you could expand your horizons by leaving the house.
You could, right?
That's a different beast. That's a beast of a different color. But at least within my house, I don't want to watch the same things, and I don't want to just read the same things.
Yeah.
And if you don't take that chance, like, then your carefully curated feeds and your lists, like, that's all you'll have.
Yeah. You kind of feed the brokenness that you are at that point. You're not allowing yourself to see a different perspective and hear another possibility.
Yeah.
And your world becomes very, very narrow. And yes, are there people that have a real fear of stepping outside, and did having the idea of some virus floating in the air make it worse? Absolutely, that's a thing. And I'm not saying that people need to jump outside and get out of your world and stop staring at a screen the whole time entirely, because that's a real fear for a lot of people. But you end up not seeing the solution right in front of you.
The other weird thing is I'm culturally Jewish, and not necessarily as practicing as sometimes I'd like to be.
Sure.
Because I'm always kind of a little jealous of people with faith.
Yeah.
And it's really not like, oh, I don't have faith, but I don't have that relationship to it.
Sure.
But culturally, my mother is still, even if it's, I don't know, let's say in Fahrenheit 60 degrees, where I don't think I need a jacket. If we're going to visit my parents, I'll take a jacket with me, even if I don't wear it, so my mother's not, so I think that culturally, that's the same as like worrying about the virus you can't see, right? And that was a thing that always existed before what we've gone through the last few years.
Absolutely.
And again, it's like, welcome to the table. Like, there were some of us that were like, I'm not a germaphobe, but I was still always worried about getting sick.
Sure.
And like we all get sick. Like, that's a universal, right? Like, we all get sick.
Yeah.
And you know what? You may not have as much anxiety as I do. Everybody's got it. Like, to some level, like you went in for that test in 7th grade, and guess what? Your stomach was a little, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
you just didn't realize what it was.
That's still anxiety. It was not the waffle you had for breakfast, right? Like,
exactly.
And we do, aside from getting lost in our own algorithms and our own feeds, we are our own best/worst excuses.
Yeah.
Like, it was just the waffle. I don't have anxiety. Like, it was just that one time when I took a test, or when I have a big meeting, right? Like, but I shouldn't have eaten the street hot dog. Like we will come up with those. Like, so it's one of those things where, like, I know I'm not unique in the before times. Like, before I was like, no, my anxiety is going to keep me from that event of making up excuses. We've all done it. Like, I don't feel well. It must have been what I ate. Like, we're so good at it.
We are. And mainly because we don't, for the most part, human beings don't like not knowing. We love knowledge, and trust me, knowledge is a fantastic thing, but it also is super crippling at the same time.
Yeah.
And it saves us from worrying about some things, but it adds on other worries. My wife is an oncology nurse, and I mean, I say it to her all the time. We have a 17-month-old. We have another one coming in July, and she knows a lot when it comes to medicine, far more than I do, and not necessarily about, being pregnant, but she knows a lot. So she worries a little bit more than I do about certain situations. And that's a good thing to me. But for a lot of people, that knowing too much, it's like you ate a waffle and it was that waffle. That's all it is. Do you need 5 pounds of butter on that Eggo? No. Eggo is fantastic, but no kidding, your stomach hurts.
But I go back to, there was an episode of Scrubs where Dr. Cox, after he has his baby in season 4 or something, is looking for a pediatric doctor, and the doctor just has a face-to-face with him, okay, you've seen some shit. You know what every little cough or runny nose or fever could be.
And but nobody played that role better than Christopher Maloney. I mean, how do you get the guy from SVU to become a pediatrician? I don't know, but it's very true.
But that is we're our own worst enemies in that scenario. And I know that politically speaking, the idea of quote unquote doing your own research has become more of a meme than it has been an act of learning. But, I think we've reached a point where doing your own research is just code for other things now.
You're putting it off, you're not, is that a broken leg? Yeah, bro, you didn't need to Google it. You need to go to the emergency room now. But people don't, that's an extreme. That's like telling somebody, that's the physical version of telling somebody, hey, I think you might need to see a therapist, because now it's real, and it might take more than just resting.
Yeah.
And that's hard for people.
Come on.
It pops up all the time.
I don't care what you say. Chicken soup and rest is all I need. But you're right.
Don't worry. It'll go away.
Yeah,
it may not. Just FYI. But that's okay. But there's a quick fix for everything. And I might be old school in that, but I think I'm going to be okay with staying old school with that. I don't want a quick fix for everything. Do I want my headache to go away fast? Yeah. But, are there some things that I need to just listen, you need to pause for a second and really think about this. Okay. I won't jump in and spend that much money, or no, I won't just, take a diet pill. I'm going to knock off having a soda every 5 hours. I
think it goes back to your car. Think about your car. Okay. Yeah. You're driving it all the time, maybe in speeds in excess of 35 miles an hour. And I bring that up for a very specific reason. If you get in an accident over 35 miles an hour, some shit could happen to you.
Yeah.
Do you really want the mechanic to do the quick fix on your car? No, you don't, right? You want them to take their time and make sure it runs as originally intended, not, as long as the tape holds, you're fine.
Right. I was going to say, there's that person too that, listen, I'm not depressed. I'm fine. I'll be okay. They're the same person that probably their bumper is being held by duct tape, and they think that's okay. And it's not until it falls underneath your car, and now you're skidding off the road.
Yeah.
There's versions of it everywhere, and it's could go on for days, because we want that quick fix, and none of it is a quick fix. It's hard work.
We got you and I are both old enough, to get to that point where I think one of the things that has ruined us as humans, I am going to speak generally for a second, is that the speed at which certain things happen has sped up exponentially, right? So my computer from 30 years ago may have taken a while to warm up. Now I hit a button and it works, right?
Yeah.
And if I had a question 30 years ago, it was actually quicker to consult an encyclopedia or a dictionary versus going on to dial-up, right?
Yeah.
all of these things have sped up. Guess what? If there's something broken with my car, it's still the same amount of time.
You don't
Like
get to do
if
that,
there's
right.
something wrong, if my leg's broken, I still spend the same amount of time in surgery, right? Like, so what we've kind of gotten spoiled because we try and transitive property everything around us. Well,
you can.
My information comes to me so much quicker. So why doesn't my car just fix itself now, right? Like, or whatever it is. And so we've kind of spoiled ourselves.
We are, and we're blinded to the genuine solution. So I'll give you an example. One that I probably didn't see coming. It probably debunks the fact that the generational thing, because you would think that by now people older than us would get it. But I was at the gym yesterday, and I hear everything and anything. And there's this gentleman who, by listening, this is the only reason I could be that specific. 73. And for whatever reason, he started, and I have my own pet peeves about people talking loudly at the gym to each other, but that's a whole nother story. All of a sudden, I hear this voice next to me, and he's like, I don't know why I'm using this machine. I'm like, is he talking to me? And I look over, and I'm like, no, you're not talking to me. He's yelling at the woman across from him. Long story short, as they're talking, he has 3 kids. The youngest one that he was referring to the most is 16. His wife, I guess, passed away recently, within the year, I'm guessing. But he's talking to this woman who, again, I could be specific because she felt the need to share her age, 87, about the fact that he's lost a lot of weight. And he initially shared the fact that through all this with the pandemic, his son has lost like almost 40 pounds and blah, blah, blah. And so the woman who I ended up like transferring to a different machine sitting next to her, because that's where I needed to be anyway. She goes, well, everybody needs to exercise, honey. Like, you should be glad that you're in here, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't eat great. She's like, I like to eat and I like to bake. She's like, have you tried giving him mashed potatoes and gravy? And I wanted to laugh because I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what would fix anybody back then, because that sounds amazing. I want mashed potatoes and gravy like all the time. But there's where her head was, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, only 10 years-ish younger than she, the gentleman's like, I've tried this. Like, he sees a dietitian for the past 5 months. I made him this shake the other day with like all these fruits and kale and orange juice, really healthy. I'm like, no, that was just a lot of sugar, so it wasn't really healthy. But anyway, I'm listening. And he makes this statement so quick and then keeps going. He says, my wife used to do the cooking. She's Slovenia, I think is where she's from. Used to make all these, great meals, like Italian meals for me. Used to always eat it. And now he doesn't eat. And then he kept going, right? He keeps talking. And in my head, I'm like, you just shared your own answer.
Yeah.
Like, there's the reason why your son is having a hard time. He doesn't need a dietitian. It's not because he has no social life and gaming. He needs to see a therapist. You need to listen to him better than what you're doing. And I'm not saying that I have no idea what other conversation he was having with them.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a great father, but he was missing that piece that your son is inadvertently telling you I'll just keep it simple. He's sad. His mom died.
Yeah.
And his mom was associated to eating. And so both things disconnected, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted a quick fix. We wanted go see a dietitian. Why aren't you eating this hamburger? Oh, he's got no social life. He never goes out. He's always playing games. Well, he's doing that because he's closed in on himself. And that right there, when I came home, my wife was like, you didn't say that out loud, did you? I'm like, no. But if they brought me into the conversation, yeah, I would have said it, because that's a lot of what's going on, is that people, they're searching outside for a solution. And a lot of times, yeah, you might need that. You might need that dietitian. You probably should go see a therapist. There's nothing wrong with that. But you don't need to be the one to try and fix it on your own either. And, that's a lot of what is the trouble with what's going on in the world.
Well,
is that
it's funny
we're not
too.
listening. We stopped listening somewhere.
There was another part of that story that hits me though, which is the generational piece, because
Exactly.
I am okay. Let's get into this. I am 38 going on 39.
I'll be 41 in 2 months.
So you and I are in the same boat. We are elder millennials not quite Gen X. We're in that quote unquote in between
boat.
generation.
Yeah. We're like in a canoe between both boats, you know?
And I look at my values as more Gen X values.
Yeah.
But I live in a millennial space more than likely. And so I was joking with somebody very recently about my YouTube algorithm feed, okay? Where my algorithm feed, because I watch a lot of YouTube, is a lot of like probably Generation X, elder millennial type, British panel show things, and maybe some music videos that throw back to my youth, right? But I also watch Minecraft YouTubers, right? So my algorithm,
it's all over the place.
If you didn't know me and looked at my algorithm, you'd probably swear I had kids. Right. And like you could see like, okay, that's what he watches. And then his kid gets on and watches Minecraft. And so I'm in between this spot. And I look at it like it gives me a little bit of insight. Like I watch Twitch and I understand that communities kind of form around these streamers and content creators on a level of what I guess the older Gen Xers would say deadheads.
Yeah.
And there's a community where if you maybe based on iconography or other things, where if you see somebody, like, oh, they're in this crew, right? And so from the outside, maybe my parents or your parents see someone sitting at their computer for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
But like, I know that if they're watching this one content creator, they're probably in their Discord and they're in their Twitch channel chatting and interacting with other people. Like I'm also someone who will say there's no replacement for like just hanging out. But at the same time, it's very accessible to have a chat with people that are slightly either super like-minded or only slightly like-minded from around the world. And then you get more perspective, right? But it's such a different thing. And listening to your story and like, oh, this and this, different things mean different things, especially to different generations.
And I think we switched somewhere along the way, though, that, when I look at, my parents, and there are things that I find myself, and it's probably one of the biggest takeaways is, and one of the things that I enjoy being a middle school teacher is that, I didn't want to be like them. I didn't want to be, I didn't think I was super cool either, but I had my pulse on something. And now when I look at, my parents, that, when they listen to things that I might share, things that I'm doing, and I have to kind of explain, like, okay, hold on, that probably didn't make any sense because that's a little bit out of their generation. So hold on a second. Let me help them get it. Let me help them explain it.
Yeah.
And it's not everything like over the top, but it's like, I got to slow down my conversation for a second. But I think what happened between the generations is that phrase of, well, I don't get it, went from I don't get it and that's okay. Help me understand it. I don't think I'm going to like it. I think it's still stupid, but at least I understand why you think that's worth your time.
Yeah.
We switched to just saying, well, I don't get it. These kids these days are stupid, and kids are going to be stupid. Kids are always going to be stupid. And that's how they become adults that aren't stupid. But we stop that phrase right where, like at the end there, where it says, I don't get it. And you're out. And we have a lot to learn from the extra part of that statement, which is, I don't get it, but help me understand. There's a lot of things that, I do that just between my wife and I. We're only, 2 years apart, but certainly it helps me when I start to explain something and she gives me this look like, well, that's just dumb. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. That is dumb. Or I don't even get in my mouth. I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell her. And I'm like, this is a stupid part of my day. Yep. We're going to stop doing that now because I feel stupid. It's because we stopped questioning, like, okay, can you explain that to me?
I think
genuinely, passionately.
No, I get some of that. I think the other part is millennials got such a bad rap for the longest time in general culture, that I think they were like, this is ours and we're not going to explain it to you. And I think we closed them down by attacking them so much. And I say but I mean, I'm an older, I'm still part of it, and I understood most of what they were going through. But at the same time, I watched them being attacked and was like, I don't want you to attack me. I'm a Gen Xer. Like, I made that choice.
I'm on your side, man.
But like, they got attacked so much they closed ranks, and it makes them.
Who's to blame them, right?
You can't, no. And I mean, I think Gen X gets a bad rap as well, because Gen X was slackers. Like, we were not supposed to do anything, right? Like, I look at the poster children for Gen X and I go, all right, well, it's Kevin Smith, right? Like, it's the guy who just happened to make a movie in his spare time, right? Like, and we prop them up, and it's like, okay, well, let's see what happens now.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. The generational differences like astound me. And you know, being in between means that I get the best and worst of everything.
You do, right?
Like, I think part of it is we grow up either rebelling against the generation above us or wanting to be a part of the generation above us.
But eventually we do. We just, just a matter of when you get to that point. Some people get to that point early on. They're like, wait a minute. Yeah, I respect my elders totally. Like, you kind of do things weird, bro, but I see where you're coming from. I know I've been defiant to my parents. I can tell you my brother has done the same, never to the point that it's like, I hate my parents, but certainly that natural moment of like, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand. But now it's like, okay, I get it. Especially then when it became a parent, it's like, oh, I absolutely get it. And I almost wanted to apologize to my parents. I'm like, listen, I don't know what all these things I said when I was like super young. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got it. And I knew it was coming. I was like, if I ever have a kid, I'm going to pay for a lot of my sarcastic moments. But there are people that never, not because you need a kid to do that, but there are people that never get to that point of, there is some version of the people that came before me that are right, and that's a lot. We've missed the middle ground of transitioning to the kind of slow down to the speed up. Everybody's at the speed up phase. We missed the middle part of like, there's a version of this that you can speed things up and things that you should speed up, but then there are a lot of things that you don't need to and should never try to speed up. I mean, I get something said to me like on a weekly basis that's like, well, how come you didn't take a picture of your kid doing this, or how come you don't post this? I'm like, cause I'm not like, I'm lucky if I don't know. And then I'm like, I don't know how people even get to take the pictures that they do of their kids or the videos. I'm like, you've got to have it glued to your forehead. But I'm like, I didn't, because I'm watching this. Like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, wait a minute, you're asking me that question. What are you doing? Like,
well,
are you missing every moment of your life at this point? Like,
see, some of that is that, right? Like, I look back, I spent a semester abroad, and I go through the pictures I took. Like, now the pictures I took, this was 2000. So digital cameras aren't a thing. I'm still using an actual camera and film. But the pictures I took don't include me, right? Like, that's not a thing that we did. And I look back and I go, I was behind the camera so much, even like the group photos, really, like, I'm not there, right? Like, and that's fine. And I go forward to like when I was in college, there aren't that many pictures of me in college. Again, I either had the camera or we were in it.
We were in it. Yeah.
And now, I occasionally take a photo with my phone, but you won't like, I try to actively put my phone down. I don't need it. I'm not addicted to it. I know
if I could unlearn this smartphone, I genuinely would. I put it down because I can't not
check it. So like I put it down and then I go to another room, right? And then I like watch TV and I'm fully engaged in the program I'm watching because I don't have my phone. There's nothing else. And that's important. Like when I read, I don't read with my phone out. Like that would be too much for me. I let's just do this thing. And part of that's us.
Yeah. And a lot of people will tell you, like, how come you don't take pictures of yourself? Like how come like on your, your social profiles and all, because well, for starters, like I don't love me that much. If I'm being honest, but my mom would tell you something different, like that I'm absolutely enamored with myself, but I don't. And so it's like, and that's a lot of what I've realized through the years of running my own business, and as I kind of morphed into what I'm doing with my podcast, it's like, wait a minute, like none of this is about you. Like, what are you doing? And so it never made sense for me. Like when I see that on people's profiles, and it's like, wait a minute, you're a trainer. I don't I don't want to see your abs like while you're eating pizza. Like, how is that helping me? Like, what is the purpose here? What am I doing? And we miss that, I think, in life, or what it's doing is masking the fact that we're missing, something in our life. And that's not to say that people that take a lot of selfies are, depressed and have all these problems. They might be outside of the fact they're taking all those selfies, but there's something to be said about like living in the moment and what that really means. There are hundreds of times, and I've never been this super phone is attached to me. It's always there, but for me, I would call it that I've had a problem with being by my phone. Now, there are days like I'll come in this house and like an hour later, I'll be like, shit, I left my phone in the car. Like, who does that? Like that, and then like, to be completely attached to everything, like my watch will warn me like, so we're not tracking your phone anymore. I'm like, damn it. Hold on. Got to put shoes on to go get my phone out of my car because it didn't matter to me anymore. And I'm like, that's great. Or I get agitated when my phone tells me that my screen time is now like 4 hours for them. I'm like, damn it. What was I doing?
Well, see, and I think that there's a healthy balance to that like, yeah, okay, I don't need it. I am probably not unique to me, but like, I know that I'm in a minority this. I will take my computer over a phone any day. Like I want to experience things bigger, and it's not like my eyesight's going or anything, but like I type better on a keyboard than a keypad. And I don't use Twitter to doom scroll. I use Twitter to communicate and engage, right? Like, so I'm using it for different reasons. And
well, it has a finality to it too. You physically can turn that off a little bit differently than a phone. God help us if we ever told somebody like to turn off their phone.
Well, I don't have, but God forbid something happened. JD, nobody can. I don't have a home phone. Like I don't have a landline anymore, right? Like, and you and I are of that generation where like that was a big deal.
Oh, I still remember my home phone number as a kid. That's how important it was, right?
I still remember it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's put it this way. We moved when I was like 10, so I don't remember that one, but the one from like middle and high school, still ingrained into my head. Like, in fact, I think I still know my best friend's phone number from college.
Sure,
because it was a lot of
you had to,
and like good. Does anybody like? Do you know your wife's phone number?
I do.
Okay, but I was expecting.
And I actually stunned a lady at the pediatrician the other week. This is one of the first and only appointments we've ever done by ourselves, just because scheduling wise, like it wasn't her day off and couldn't figure it out. The lady goes, what's your wife's name? And, I said her name. She's like, very inquisitive, like, do you know your wife's phone number for the account? I'm like, yep. And I rattled it off, and I'd swear she gave me this look like, holy crap. Like,
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up. That's like that, the A+ for you. Like that is super impressive. Like I think my parents still have the landline, so I know that number.
See, my parents got, and I thought that was the craziest thing. So they moved here closer to us last year because we had a kid, and I never thought they'd do that. They lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for like almost all of my life, 30 years. And I want to say maybe like 5-10 years ago, they were like, listen, we don't need a landline, because it was attached to, everything, like cable and internet, like it was like one bundle like thing that they did.
Yeah.
It was really that. It was like paying too much. And they were like, we're going to cancel it. And I just remember thinking like, oh, can you do that? Like, does my childhood get erased with that? Like, that's crazy. Yeah. But it's just funny. I mean, we're attached to that, and it's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, I have it set, and it's probably one of the greatest things I've ever done with my mind is my phone turns off, like, it goes into like a dark mode at a certain time of night. I sent that, and it was a panic for a while. It's like, well, hold on. I've got two elderly parents. I've got a brother that doesn't live here. Like, my wife is right here, and everything, but she would answer the phone. Her does it. But what happens if, but you don't realize that there are those safeguards. Like, if you need an emergency, somebody can call you. They don't need to like text you, but you don't need 5,000 notifications going off. So
I think most of the phones, if somebody calls twice in a row, will override almost anything. And
but we forget that. We're so hardwired to think like, oh, I need this right by my side. And that's probably why you enjoy the laptop. I mean, there's where it started. When I was teaching for the last 5 years of it, I decided to myself, like, when I leave here, because you could teach and deal with teaching 24/7 unless you do it yourself. I would genuinely put my hand on top of the laptop and go, hey, it's 4:30. When you close, is there anything else that you need to do right now? Nope. Yeah. And it's shut and it's done. And I've transferred that to now, the past 5 years working for myself. When this thing turns off, when I shut it down, like, that's it for me. And that's a relief. And I mean, so when you said that, I like being on a desktop and or a screen in front of you, I can totally relate. And there's why, because for me, mentally, I could shut that off. And my wife will tell me like thousands of times, like, if you need to do something, like, after, our son comes home, or, when I come home from work, like, I'm like, no, you don't understand. When it's whatever time of the day I've chosen, whether it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, that's it. Like, I have to. And for a lot of people, I think they don't. They think they have to. Content creators, especially, right? We have to be on. We have to have every social media account. We have to be tweeting and posting. And I quit. Like, within the past year, I quit all of those. I think I'm down to just Twitter and a personal Instagram.
Yeah,
I barely touch that one. But
by trade, like professionally, I'm a digital marketer, so I can't pull the plug on everything. Like, I still need to have a Facebook account to run a page for a client and stuff like that. But like, I log into it maybe once a month just to see, like, oh, they've changed the interface again, right? But I don't use it, and I use Twitter. That's it. That's the one I use, right? And everybody's like, well, you're always on Twitter. Yeah, but it's the old, like, I'm not sometimes on Twitter and sometimes on Instagram and sometimes on TikTok and sometimes on Facebook. I'm always on one, which is probably less time than you spend on all of them, right? Like, so like, I get it, but like, there's a part of me, and I've only started this recently, like, the job I have is a part-time job. And the episode that preceded this is with my boss. And
nice.
We're recording this before that released, obviously. So like, you don't know this. And if anybody's listening to this that didn't hear it, my boss has a very, very segmented look at, you work, but you don't work 24/7. Yeah. Like, even though the hours can be whatever, like, you don't work. Like, and so, I'll send an email at 4 and be like, I'm gonna go start cooking dinner or whatever, right? And it's like, all right, that's fine. Or at 4 o'clock on Friday, like, have a good weekend.
Yeah.
And I've started to, and because that's part-time and I can edit this show during the day, I've started trying to take my nights and my weekends back. Now, look, this is a hobby, and I'd still prefer to record on an evening, so I'm not interjecting with other people's,
right?
But for the most part, for the past few months, my nights and weekends have been filled with nothing, for lack of a better term, right? Like, I'm reading, I'm watching movies, I'm doing chores, whatever, but I'm not working. Even though my hobby's my passion, I'm not doing it because I want to stop.
And that's important for a multitude of reasons, but
I need to recharge.
Your mental health more than anything.
Well, that's the thing. I look back and I realize that at my height, I had a full-time job that was a little over 40 hours a week. I mean, it was a full-time job in that, I had to be there at 8:30 and I could leave at 5. You don't always leave at 5. You don't always get there at 8:30, right? And being in digital marketing, you end up, maybe doing a little bit extra or being there on the weekend or whatever. But then I would come home. This was in my single days. And then I'd podcast. I'd have dinner and I'd podcast for 3 hours or 4 hours or I'd, have a break. And then I've got some West Coast friends and I'd podcast at like 8 to midnight and then do it again. I don't know how I did that. Other than I was younger then. Like, that's the only thing I can look back
a
and
little bit more mental stamina.
And now,
no,
I don't know what I was avoiding then either. Like, it's like this was
right. I was going to say there's something there too, right?
I mean, that's why we see like the last few years of people being forced to be home, forced to spend time with themselves. I was just avoiding stuff. I was just busy to avoid stuff. And I'm not that, but I also go like, it's good to rest. Like, it's good to relax.
Sometimes we take it a little too far and, it becomes laziness. But yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, whether you're, single, married with kids, there's some version of resting that being off. I mean, totally off. And that doesn't mean you have to, go off the grid, but you have to turn things off. There's nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. I think some customer support centers take that a little bit too extreme, but I take pleasure in when I email somebody, they'll maybe have so I have it in mind too. I'm available in these hours, or they'll tell you that, as a company, their hours are not on the weekends. Their business hours are these. And I'm like, that's great. That's great. Because I even have a bad habit of doing that. I'll look at it and be like, listen, I sent you an email yesterday. You've had 24 hours to respond to this, you forget that there is a life there. And so you have to kind of balance the two.
I worked in marketing, and my former boss used to tell me, this isn't a hospital.
Yeah.
It can wait till tomorrow. Yeah. You can go home now.
There are people that triage that, and there are people that are there for that are, 24/7, but there's not. I mean, just on the health front, I mean, my wife, she sees it all the time, with what she does. And it's, even there, it's just people messaged at 4:00 on a Saturday afternoon to their My Chart for their doctor, and it's hey, it's the weekend, and it does say somewhere in there that you're not going to get a response, but it's something serious that you go, listen, you don't need to send me a message. I'm obviously not going to get this until Monday. Go to the hospital. This is an emergency, because we forget that people are. Well, there's a human being involved there, from both ends.
Well, I think that's the key, right? We always forget there's when you're yelling at customer service, that's a person. When you're yelling at your doctor, that's a person. They need to recharge too. I mean, you don't want a tired doctor, right? We go back to the lazy, the mechanic who can fix it in 30 seconds. You don't want the doctor who hasn't had sleep.
No. Or the pilot who didn't, take a day off. No, nope. But that's our whole nother conversation. But it's the same. It goes back to all the, what we've been talking about. It's the same thing. It's just, we want these quick fixes, whether we're, on a personal level, on a business level, and there's so many examples within a day alone that drive me off the wall. Cause it's listen, are you, and there are some moments where I've said it to people, customer service. And politely, but did you read the previous thing? Because if you did, I swear, I don't know, maybe you saw me tweet it earlier. I don't know when I did, but I'm fairly certain that somewhere they had a conversation about customer service, and customer service, the phrase turned into customers at fault. Like there's no, hey, and I've watched the IT crowd. I get it. Like, did you turn the computer on and off?
Yeah.
Sure. I understand that you have to get those things out of the way, but somewhere in there, you have to realize, like, listen, this is not a quick fix of me just going, oh, you know what? I was an idiot. I shouldn't have emailed you. I'm so sorry. There's probably like the negative result of being too quick. You're not even paying attention to the fact that your job title is customer support and you are dealing with a customer. I don't care if this is a free service or I'm paying $500 a month. Some version of that is a human being, and they need your help here.
That's a lot. It's not a heavy episode per se, but it's not one of the light ones either. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I think that it's important to not just speak with advocates like JD, but to speak to people like me who live with mental health anxieties. I keep going back to episode 13 with Neil, where we both told vastly different stories about how our anxieties came to be. But we deal with it similarly, and we're both open to talking about it. It's one of the reasons that my DMs, like JD's, are always open. We want to be a resource, not necessarily a professional diagnostician or even an expert, but just someone you can talk to. To reiterate, self-care isn't selfish. Neither is talking about your own mental health. But there was a lot of other stuff that came up in this episode, specifically how JD spoke at the very beginning about the difference between help and support. It has made me think more about the importance of words. I do want to help people, sure, but I think I'd much rather support them. And in retrospect to some of the projects I'm currently involved in, I would say I am supporting much more than helping based on his definition of both parties being more or less equal as opposed to one being weaker. And of course, I can't let you go without revisiting the part of our conversation about how the speed of information has become faster in some things, and yet the speed of some others hasn't sped up equally or perhaps at all. Yet our perspective has changed to expect that everything be fast, or at least faster. Take a breath. Take a moment. Sure, sometimes the speed at which things happen is great, and other times the panic of the need to have whatever it is now induces more anxiety than had you just waited for it. I'm not saying you have to be laid back all the time. I'm just saying you don't necessarily need to have it all and have it now. Relax. Take a couple of deep breaths. And while you're doing that, I'll get out of the loop I've got myself stuck in. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files, episode 67. As a reminder, all links are available in the show notes, and now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest JD at JD_the Jedi, that's JD_THEJEDI, or this show at the Palmer Files. You can find more information on JD and Veritas Fit at veritasfit.com. That's VERITASFIT.com, or by listening to JD host the Dark Days, Bright Nights podcast. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, JD, do you have one final question for me?
I do. So we established that we're generally around the same age.
Yes.
And so I always like to look at those generational pieces, and especially when it comes to technology, because there are days when I just can't stand technology. Tell me what you miss the most about VHS tapes.
Blockbuster. That's it. Like it's going to it's the experience of going to the Blockbuster on a Friday night with a group of friends and just yelling across the Blockbuster like, "Hey, do you want to? How about this? No, we watched that last week without you. How about this? Like that experience. Oh, like we can't agree on anything. Let's just get our old standby.
They're all out of that movie, man. That just came out yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's it, though, man. Like I miss that experience of arguing about it
because it becomes overwhelming now. You know, it's just I can watch anything, anytime. Great, I guess, but it's still not like you don't get to miss out on it. It's not like it's gone.
No. And the other thing is like, I guess it's very underrated now because there's so many avenues for this, but like every Blockbuster had one employee that knew movies. Like there were plenty that were there for the paycheck and it was a decent job. Yeah. There's always one guy there that could suggest something to you.
He had something. No, I mean, I totally hit I could see myself in that. Look, block. You'd walk in and like know exactly where that movie was or where the new releases are. Like you knew before you even got like 20 feet to like, damn it. It's not as thick. They're all gone. It's just the display. Damn it.
Yeah. No, I mean, the other thing is I recently within the last year, I watched the documentary, The Last Blockbuster.
The Last Blockbuster. Yeah, that was great.
And it was just, it like it takes you back, like the moment that they go in there, like you smell it, like you feel the lights already, and you like it. It was a part of our like childhood. The other part is we thought we were so grown up.
We did.
We weren't, but we so thought we were grown up, and it I will say. Even like the last time I remember going to a Blockbuster, like towards the end, it wasn't the same with DVDs because there's something about the size of a VHS that like you can't.
It was like you checked out the whole store if you got like 3 movies.
Yeah, you can't just casually carry that or whatever. Like there's some heft to it, and cracking the plastic and snapping it back together. Yeah, no, that's it.
Plus, if you were out of, like, say you went in there, to get, a specific new release or whatever, and that wasn't there, but, your friends were over or whatever, like that was your movie night, with your family, like you had 2 choices. You either were like, well, guess we're not having movie night or we're going to watch something we have at home. Or you were like, well, I heard this one was good. And you branched out and you found something else, now it's like, well, you suggested this one to me, or I'm going to put all these in my watch list, and now I've got nothing but these. And they don't even suggest it anymore. Like, whatever you're talking about, Disney Plus, Apple TV, like they have their own suggestions, and it's like, wait a minute, like you have to like dig, you have to find, like even with music, you have to like find where you can browse categories just to, venture out. Now it's like no, that was I didn't even think about that one.
Well, and don't forget, they also put series right next to movies, right? So it's like, you may like this. And it's like, well, yeah, I want to watch it. I want to see the end in less than 2 hours. I don't have 6 hours for this 6-episode miniseries. Like, I just want to see something happen.
Just want to see happen.
That's it. Like, let it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, obviously I don't miss rewinding. I don't miss tracking. These are the things I do not miss, but the Blockbuster, well, or the movie rental, some people had their own local ones. Cause
that experience. Yeah, sure. But no, I generalize it too, but it's the same thing. You're right.
Yeah. That's it. That's what I miss.
I like it.